Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the CultureCast. If you're joining us for the first time, this is eXp's official diversity, equity, and inclusion podcast. We're here on episode 13. We're coming really far with this, and today we're talking about a really important topic. We're talking about Transgender Day of Remembrance. And joining me today is Robin Mann, celebrated agent, everybody's favorite. Robin, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to give people a little bit of your background?
Sure. I have been in the business 8.5 years, been with eXp. It'll be 4 on January 1st. Woo-hoo. 4-time icon. And I've sold a home a week every week since 2016. That's like my big, yeah. I've got 60 people in my organization. And I've got 2 wonderful kids and a husband and what I got? 2 dogs, 4 cats, 5 chickens, and a duck.
And a duck?
And a duck.
Oh my gosh. I love ducks. You know, when people ask that question, what animal would you be if you could be an animal? I think duck is the obvious answer, right?
That has been my answer always.
And they walk and they fly. Who else? You mean ducks are amazing.
Always been my answer, but I would be a male duck because female ducks, they get destroyed. It's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the duck mating season. We can delete that out if you want, but
I love ducks, but yeah, I mean, they're so versatile, and also they quack, which is adorable. So it's cute.
Exactly.
So we're here talking about Trans Day of Remembrance. Let's shed some light on the significance of Trans Day of Remembrance and tell people why it's crucial to commemorate this day in the sort of broader context of the struggle of the LGBTQ plus community. Why are we talking about this, Robin?
Yeah, first, I'm honored to be asked. I'm no way an expert in trans. I'm an ally, and I have trans friends and family. I think the importance of this day is that we don't know about it, and that it's one of the largest populations that I know of. I know there are global, but it is a very large population where hate crimes happen, and not even just hate crimes, but hate murders happen, and they aren't reported and they aren't recognized. And there's a lot of shame for the families, and there's a lot of shame around it. And my overlying story of it all is that that's someone's baby, that's someone's child, and they deserve to be seen and they deserve to be recognized. So I think it's important to put it out there. I did just a little research looking at stories, and there's just hundreds of heart-wrenching stories of these people just living their lives, and they are killed because of hate.
Yeah, that's true. And it's what we see is this sort of trans panic defense, which is sort of like the gay panic defense of the 80s and 90s, if anybody remembers that's listening. But this sort of, I didn't know this person was trans, and when I found out, my reaction was to violently attack them.
Right.
That's it's just a scary reality in our legal system today that people are using this defense quite a lot.
It's horrible. Then just walk away. You don't have to kill them. Just walk away. That's right. A very simple thing you were told to do as a kid. Walk away.
Yeah. And then, I think navigating your life as a trans person is difficult. In context of the broader LGBTQ community and the issues that we face currently is, we see a lot of existence being politicized, which is a wild thing, to politicize someone's existence, right?
Yeah.
Someone is existing, living their life to their fullest, living their best life. And, you think it's inappropriate because someone who you hold in high regard thinks that way.
Right.
I would, ask anybody watching this who has, negative thoughts or views about the trans community based on what they've seen on the news and what they've seen on TV or what they've heard on the radio, to just listen into this episode and challenge that a little bit. I'd also encourage you. EXP offers a really robust pronouns training that I teach. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to us at dei@exprealty.net. We've got the information for joining the DEI team down there. Just say, hey, me and my team could use it, or I could use it, and we can help you learn more about it. What we find more often than not when it comes to the topic of the transgender community is that people don't make the attempt to learn more about it because they're afraid of what if they say the wrong thing.
Right.
And we break down in that training how easy that misconception is to barrel through, because often if you say the wrong thing, you apologize and move on.
And it's great.
That's it.
You apologize and move on.
Apologize and move on. That's it. That's the end of the story.
Well, I think the remembrance part is significant. Like,
yeah.
As a mom, I would love to know that my child is remembered, and that they are honored in some way. So I don't know. I think it offers a little bit of love to the families who have lost, and only because their kid was not normal. None of us are normal. I'm not normal. Like none of us are normal. So why are we killing folks?
Yeah. I mean, it's another piece of this as well, that it's not just violence against the trans community, but it's also suicide rates. Transgender individuals are 8 times more likely than cisgender individuals to have attempted suicide before age 30. Which is a really staggering stat, 8 times more likely.
Well, and on that, like so our son came out and as gay, and when he came out, I called the suicide prevention hotline, like me personally as a mom, not because I was thinking of I was going to commit suicide, but I wanted to help him. And so like, that's a resource for everyone. Like they applauded me for calling. They were like, I was like, I'm not suicidal, but I want my son to not be. What can I do to help him? And they walked me through it, and we did some steps together, and you can call back. Like, it's not just if you are thinking about suicide. If you want to understand how to help your child or your loved one come to grips with coming out as who they are as a true person, that I think there are resources that you can call that you may not even think of. I called them immediately. Like, I'm not going to survive, but I want help. So
yeah, it's great. And now, the beautiful thing about that is now that's available. I preach this all the time because people don't know it and it wasn't advertised well. But now the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is also the mental health crisis hotline for the U.S.
Yeah.
And it is available with a 3-digit number, 988, and you can dial it from anywhere. You can dial 911. So even when you're in scary dead zones with your phone, right, you can dial emergency numbers, including that one.
That's cool. I didn't know that. That's very cool.
So 988 is there if you or someone else is experiencing a mental health crisis. And, for transgender individuals, if you know someone who's trans that needs a resource, there are a lot of those available too. And I'm happy to help you find those resources if you have a question about those. But just off the top of my head, some of those would be that one, 988. Or there's also the Trevor Project, which has a great round-the-clock 24/7 support chat as well as text if you don't want to speak. And then, there is also the Born This Way Foundation, which is a fantastic organization started by Lady Gaga.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah, that is really good and does a lot of charitable work and helps a lot of local organizations, LGBTQ organizations, help stand themselves up.
Nice.
So all those are great. So talk to me a little bit about personal experiences you've had with folks from the trans community. I have a feeling you've got some stories you'd like to tell.
I do. So this one actually happened this weekend, and it was fascinating to watch my reaction to it and to watch their reaction to it. So I was at this local, actually we were there because it's a local restaurant. They're phenomenal. They do drag breakfast, and they get protesters all the time. And so we were there celebrating an anniversary and trying to love on the protesters. So this person's in line in front of me at the checkout with another woman and 2 kids. And I was like, gosh, I feel like I know them, but it didn't register in my brain as to who this person was, because it's a woman. And the person I was thinking of was a man, like born a man. And I was just like, man. And I couldn't see the wife's face. So I kind of lean in, and I noticed that she notices that I'm leaning in to see who she is. And I was like, I think I know you. And she said, yes, you sold us a house. And then the wife turned around, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was at a loss for words, because I didn't want to insult, and I didn't want to be like, oh my God, you look great. Or, in a bad way. I wanted to be accepting and affirming and loving. And so I literally sat there kind of in this awkward pause, like, what do I say?
Right.
And I was like, oh yes, wow. And so then I started talking about the kids and how, they'd grown, and they looked like they were great. And the wife and I spoke, and then I guess the wife, she would be called a wife now. The other wife and I spoke, who I knew as a man, and she introduced herself, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a phenomenal name. I see that really fits you. And it was so hard for me. And then I sat back and I thought, okay, wow, that was not hard for me. That was way hard for her and for her family. Like, they are out in public as a family, and to you and to me and my husband and our two kids, that's we breathe. That's what we do. That family, that is monumental for her to come out dressed as she feels as a human in public with her wife and with her kids. I mean, like, I wanted to cry, like how phenomenal it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then to think, like, you could see in her body language, she was slumped over and not living her best self. It's like she could see she was still hiding. And so later I saw them again, and I was like, you look phenomenal. And we, chatted a little bit, we hugged a little bit. It was really eye-opening in relation to even this conversation, that you just never know.
You really don't. And I think, a couple of things from that story that stick out to me is if you, of all people, were, taken aback and had that sort of awkward pause, what would someone who doesn't know and care and come with that light feel like? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think, it goes to show you that even to those of us that really do care, sometimes it gives us pause. Right.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Right.
And I think the beautiful thing about that story is how you recognized what she was going through. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that the dysphoria that comes along, gender dysphoria, for those that don't know what that is, gender dysphoria is when your self-image doesn't match up to the way that you're perceived by others, or what may come be looking back at you in the mirror. That comes alive a lot for transgender people. That's the medical diagnosis is gender dysphoria, right? That's the number one reason, the prognosis that folks are allowed to medically transition is because of dysphoria. Is such a negative mental thing.
Right.
But that dysphoria comes bubbling back up when someone who only knew you as your former self, right?
Right. Yes. And I was so cautious to not say the other name. I was like, they call it the dead name. I was just like, what I wanted to do was like, oh my gosh, you're trans, and like hug her and be like, you look phenomenal, oh my gosh. But then I was like, well, I don't know how
to draw attention. Yeah.
Right. So I just backed off. It was very enlightening. And I mean, I have another friend who's a huge advocate and very heavily involved in LGBTQIA diversity down in Charleston, and they did their transition from female born to male. I don't know the appropriate terms, but and videotaped it, and I got to watch that journey, videotape the emotional process and not necessarily the surgeries and such, but and they are phenomenal. And I actually spoke to them about this. I was like, tell me what to say that would be helpful, and they were wonderful. Like he is married. He has 2 kids now, and he's happy, and he looks happy in his heart, in his soul. And his big words were that, just that they deserve to be remembered. They deserve to be seen as valuable in this world. Yeah. And I believe that for the Transgender Day of Remembrance, they deserve to be valued. And God, it pains me. Like I read all the stories and I was like, I couldn't even read them because I'm a very, what's the word? Empath. I'm a very empathetic person. So like, reading the stories is just soul crushing. The pain that these people go through, just being themselves, and then to have their life taken away because they were just being themselves.
Right. I mean, and you know, unfortunately, we live in a world where identity. You know, we talked about this before, where identities are being politicized, and it's one of those things that going outside, being your authentic self, is tough.
Yeah.
And you know, I want to make a brief programming note to anybody that's watching this and thinking, why do we have two cisgender people on this day of remembrance talking about trans issues? And you know, eXp, we're a very, very diverse company. We're a very inclusive company. Me and my team do everything we can to make sure that we are on the cutting edge of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our Pride network is great, and it's beautiful, and it's robust. And I would encourage everyone to join that conversation and learn more, even if you're not part of the community. But our allies have a greatly magnified voice in the Pride network and the opportunity to learn from the stories of those who've been through what we've been through. All of this is to say that over the course of the past year, we've reached out a lot to our eXp community at large in a bunch of different forums, in a bunch of different ways, in many different circles, to try and find those transgender voices that want to stand up and be amplified. And right now, I think it has a lot to do with the political climate, and it has a lot to do with people getting through the struggles of their day-to-day life and not needing to add more stress. But
Right.
we still have not found someone who would be willing to be on podcasts like this, or
Yeah.
would be willing to speak about trans, someone who is trans, to speak about trans stuff on various events and panels. And I think that speaks volumes at a company with 89,000 real estate agents, being as diverse and inclusive as we are, that still there's that fear or hesitation to step forward.
Right.
Even here.
Right.
Right.
It's a, because you're worried. And like, I have the privilege of, I might get harassed about it, you know, or I might lose business because of it. I'm not living it. And so I can put it away. I don't choose to. Like, I want to advocate an ally, be an ally for transgender. But those who are, like, they don't get to put it away, and they're walking that and carrying that every day. So I totally get that it'd be hard to find someone, because they'd be a target potentially. And this day of remembrance is proof that they shouldn't be a target, you know.
Right. Shouldn't be. Yeah.
Because,
I mean, that's the, you know, the key is that this isn't just Trans Day of celebration and recognizing the pride and joy of the trans community. This is a somber day of remembrance of lives lost and lives negatively impacted by societal views that don't really have any place in society.
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about these stories, why is it important for us to amplify the voices of our trans folks in our community?
So I thought of a story. I thought of an analogy, and I hope this is an appropriate place to share the thought. Because I wanted to get, I really hope people who aren't trans and who aren't part of the Pride Network, that are just the general public at large, would listen to this story and maybe think differently about any polarized category, but especially on this day, we'll target in towards trans. So Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, horrible story, right? Rudolph is this beautiful little reindeer that's born, and he is perfect, and his mom and dad love him. He's perfect. They love him so much. And then all of a sudden, his nose lights up. And the dad is a complete jerk. He takes some coal and covers up his nose, and sends him out to play. So Rudolph does great with his little friends while he's covered up. Much like the trans people of the world, they do okay when they're covered up. When they are not their true selves, they're out there doing it. They're out there, you know, taking the girlfriend to prom when they really want to be with the guy or whatever. Like they're doing they're putting on the dress when they don't want to. All the things. I can't name those things because I don't live them. I can only guess the uncomfortableness of those thoughts. So then all of a sudden Rudolph's nose falls off and everyone sees who he is for real. And they start bullying him and they pick on him. And even Santa is mean to him. And Rudolph runs away. Now, the part of the story that sucks is they only see his value when he's of use to them. The part that helps, I think, is that that he was that same way all along. He always was of value. It was their skewed perceptions and biases and awfulness that made him not be of value. It had nothing to do with Rudolph. Right. When he came out and was his true self, he was of value. Mm-hmm. Period. When he was that little boy, the little Rudolph that ran away, he was of value. And when Santa finally saw it, he was of value. So why I think that's important is that every single person is of value. And that's what the Transgender Day of Remembrance is in my brain. Like, these people are of value. They're someone's child. And I'm a believer in whatever thing you're a believer in. If you are a believer in a higher power, that was someone's baby. That was someone's, in my words, I say that's a child of God. And God doesn't screw up. That God doesn't make mistakes. I don't know if we're allowed to say that on this thing, but I don't care if you're Hindu or Baptist or Islam or whatever. You know, you're created beautifully and perfectly, just exactly the way you are. And for people to take away lives for that it's heartbreaking and horrifying. And so if we can bring light to it and say, if we can look at everybody like a valuable Rudolph, like from the second they're born, they're valuable. And maybe they need to change, like they, to make their body, the gender dysmorphia thing. But I don't know. It just made me, that story I never liked because I didn't like that he got bullied and I didn't like that Santa was mean to him. So I just spent time with it. I don't know why it related to me and transgender, but I think why it did was that what this point of that story is that he had value all along.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And there's a lot there that speaks not just to the trans community, but for folks that are different, right? And I think, part of our message at the DEI team and one of the messages of the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion is that difference is what makes him special. Right. And it's not something that should be hidden. It's just something that should be celebrated.
Yes.
Not to, again, we're tying back to a lot of Bible studies, but that's the way I grew up, right? Is that don't hide your light under a bushel piece.
Right. Yeah.
That it took me a really long time to be able to be my professional self and also really unabashedly myself as well. Right. You can be both of those things at the same time. Yeah. Because I am a corporate voice of eXp Realty. I'm also real gay. And anybody that has a conversation with me knows I don't have anything to add to the conversation about sports, but I can talk to you about RuPaul's Drag Race to or with the face. And that's just who I am, and I bring that to work, and it helps me. It does help me, and I think it's important, also to note there's a piece in that Rudolph story that stuck out to me about when he's covering up his nose, right, to appear, so that's something that we do in the transgender community that's called passing, right?
Right.
And if you can pass or can't pass is not something everybody has the capability to do. There are a lot of individuals who, when they finally are happy with what they look like in the mirror, the world can still see that's a trans person, like a neon sign. And there's nothing they can do about it. That's biology. Right. And that makes it so these people aren't even capable of putting on the disguise. Right. You know what I mean? Which is just adds another wrinkle to this transgender conversation that's different than other things. For me, if I want to pass as straight, there's not anything I have to do about physically. Right. it's just about personality and tone and blah, blah, there's a lot of stuff you can do to make yourself pass for
Right.
straight, right? All I got to say is my wife, and then, somebody will believe I'm straight.
Right.
But if I were to put on a wig and a dress and go out, people would immediately be like, that's a man in a dress.
Right.
Right. It's a big different struggle that they have.
It is. And it's I'm really proud. Like I'm going to text that client that I ran into today and just, send some love and some affirmation, because it is they can't just be who they are. And that's awful. Like, and I know that the gay population, LGBTQ or LGBT, that whole population, struggles with that as well. And but being trans does take it to the next level. And then being a person of color that's trans, whole different ballgame, because I feel like that. I feel like that's probably the highest population of these murders. Is
it is. Oh, it is by a long shot. Yeah. I mean, we talk about these crazy murder and violence rates for trans people. Those numbers are exponential for people of color, particularly Black trans women get it very, very badly. It's that point of intersectionality where, for those that haven't heard my intersectionality spiel, the term intersectionality comes from the intersection in the way that our different varying points of identity can collate to either empower us further or make it more of a struggle for us. And it comes from an original study that was done where a Hispanic woman in the workplace was like, why am I making so much less than a white man? And they looked at her and they said, well, Hispanic people make this much to a dollar, right? They said Hispanic people, I don't remember the exact numbers, but Hispanic people make 80 cents to the dollar compared to a white person. But then a woman makes 85 cents to the dollar compared to a man. But if you're a Hispanic woman, you're making 40 cents to the dollar.
Right.
So neither of those stats really apply to you.
No.
Right. And you can't just, multiply math. No, you specifically have to look at a targeted population. And the targeted population here really is Black trans women are on a very bad looking chart, a very, very low point.
Right? And that's not even, that's just the reported ones.
That's just the reported ones. Exactly.
Right. Which is probably exponentially just unbelievably large, the unreported ones, because there is the shame that their loved one died. And they're not going to put it out there. They're not going to report it. They're going to just, it was just a drive-by, or it was just a domestic abuse. So those are, we don't even see the true numbers in relation to.
We don't. And honestly, most of the numbers that we see about trans stuff are also US based. And as being a global organization, we'd be doing a disservice not to mention the fact that the United States is not the worst place in the world to live for transgender people, not by a long shot.
Right.
There are much, much worse places. And believe me, this is everywhere. This isn't just something that only exists where modern American media is blasting to people. That's how people turned trans, because they saw it on TV. That's not real. Trans people exist everywhere. And honestly, there is a bit of
trans, and I didn't even know it. I had no clue.
Yeah. And there is a piece of the trans experience that ties back to ancient cultures and indigenous cultures, particularly in North America and particularly in Australia, where there are, people of honor. There's a term called two-spirit, which is different than transgender. But two-spirit is essentially when someone, the thought was they're born with the essence of a man and a woman inside of them, so that they can see both sides of the coin. Those people were often shamans or people of major note in those societies. And it's something that colonial erasure has sort of gotten rid of. But this is me saying that transgender people have existed for a very long time.
Right. Yes.
Um,
Very long time.
very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So the transgender community faces so much adversity today. We've talked about a little bit of this with discrimination and violence, and there's also this aspect of lack of access to healthcare. But how do we, as allies, move the needle towards a more equitable and just society for all the gender identities? What can we do?
It feels like there's so much, and then there's also, it seems like there's so little. I think voting, obviously, for political candidates that support it is a ginormous choice. But even before that, I think the core of it is taking a minute to understand, like, what if your child or your sister or your mother or your brother or your dad came to you and said, "Hey, I'm trans." In processing that. So I did youth ministry for 13 years. And I remember it was when Scruples came out, the game Scruples.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing, I had these two teens. We were playing the game Scruples. And the question I put to them was, what if I told you I was gay? And these were like pretty rural. It was Clarksville, Tennessee. So it was not a big city. And they both, like, one of them started crying. She's like, "What do you mean? What if you're gay?" And I was like, "Well, how does that change anything? Like, what if I am?" And then we sat and processed that together. So I think maybe that's something we can do as allies is to ask that question. You know, you love me, you like me, right? So what if I told you I was trans? And play that role, play that process with people, because it shouldn't change. If you love them, it shouldn't change. You might have to process it, just like when our son came out. It wasn't that I didn't love him. It was that I was afraid of the world attacking him. It had nothing to do with me and my love for him. It had to do with, okay, wow, how do we process this? And so, same thing. If Wally came to me all of a sudden, my husband, and said, "Hey, I'm trans." All right. Well, I love Wally. Like, how do we do this? So I think having the courage to even just grapple with that basic question. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's too big. Maybe that's too nebulous. Like, but maybe it's not. Maybe that's really what people need to do.
Right. And I think, for me, societal change comes from society. So it's a matter of having those conversations with the people who you love and trust about this is very, very important. And by no means am I going to say, yes, it's important to vote for folks that support trans positive legislation. Right. But it's just as important to communicate to the folks who you would want to vote for other reasons, right?
Right.
Why this is important. And I think it has to do with the value of a person. It goes back to your Rudolph story about we're all intrinsically born valuable, right?
Right.
And I think it's very, very important to note to folks that people's self-identity, regardless of how crazy it is, if someone believes this is who I am, that is worthy of respect.
Yes. And it's not our place to judge it.
Yeah.
It's not our place.
It's not, you don't have any right to say, no, you're not allowed to feel that.
Right.
Right.
We're just here to love.
We're just here to love. That's
Humankind, be both. Like, that's my favorite quote. Humankind, be both. Be human, be kind. Like, that's the bottom line. Just go be human, be kind. Like, just love on people,
Yeah. And if you've got, a view about the transgender community where you feel I could get on board, but this is what's hanging me up, I would encourage you to reach out to me, reach out to somebody in the Pride Network. Let's talk through those, because those kind of biases, and it's tough to say the word out loud that, oh my God, you're trying to say I hold a bias. Those negative views of trans folks, they are biases.
Right.
And they are easily broken down. They can be broken down, whether it's bathroom stuff or sports stuff or any of the other stuff that has been politicized recently. That's really, really easy to break down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's part of your life. We went to a college, our daughter and I, we went to a college tour, and she wanted to know if they had gender neutral bathrooms.
Mm.
And it's a college very close to here. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's on the outskirts. And the tour guide said, "Oh yeah, we don't have that here." Meaning they didn't have people who need to go to a gender neutral bathroom there on that campus. That campus had like 5,000 people. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you have
you do.
yeah." You just honoring it and seeing it and respecting it. And so, that was an immediate no for my girl. She was like, "Oh, nope, we're not going there. I need the." I mean, she just wanted that. She doesn't even need a gender neutral bathroom, but she wanted it for that. Told her about the culture of the school. They can't even have a bathroom. Okay, I don't want to go there. So
yeah, right.
It's,
I mean, it's yeah. The gender neutral bathroom conversation is it's an odd debate to get into with a trans person, to be honest with you, because the gender neutral bathroom sort of implies that the trans person needs someone somewhere separate to be safe, when we could just allow them to feel safe in the bathroom that they identify with.
yes,
right?
I love that. Yes,
There's a lot of overblown stuff in the news about how, a trans woman would be going after your daughter in the bathroom. There are no news stories that are credible that has ever happened.
Ever. It's just like this projected thing. It's so bizarre because
it's bizarre. It's the proverbial razor blade in the candy at Halloween.
Yes.
Right. It's an old wives' tale that has not ever really happened. There's no proof that has ever happened of a transgender person or a person posing as transgender in order to use the restroom in a way that leads to sexual assault is a real leap if you break it down.
Yes.
Right.
Stretch Armstrong. We're stretching on that one. Yeah.
It's very stretchy. It's very stretchy. I mean, and there are times often, and this is me sharing personal experience, there are times as a gay man in a men's restroom where I feel vulnerable.
Right. I would think so. Yeah.
Right. It crosses my mind, and it shouldn't. It's silly, but it crosses your mind. I'm gay in here. If somebody knew I was gay in here, I could be attacked.
Exactly.
Right. Because it's different. It's a private space,
Yes. For our son's, the year he had to dress out for gym, I went to the school. And I was like, I need to know if there's an adult in the locker room. And they were like, no. I was like, okay, well, I need an adult in the locker room. I was like, because bad things happen in locker rooms and my boy has come out and I need somebody standing. I was like, I don't care if your back's in the door to the locker room. You're not allowed to see things, but I need you to be within ear of everything. And they honored it. And and for that quarter, when my son was in the locker room, they honored him. Now, yes, was I carrying helicopter mom? Hell yeah, I was, because that's my baby.
Yeah, we need more like you, but yeah, I mean, with my experience growing up in South Georgia and not being fully out of the closet except friends, right? When it came to changing out at gym, it was something where I had to wear another set of clothes under my clothes if I knew I had gym. So that I could take off my clothes and be in my gym clothes underneath, and then afterwards put my clothes back on in Georgia. So it's hot. But that's how I got through it, and it's not great. It's not a great way to live.
No.
And then it becomes, how boys are of, why are you doing this differently? You're hiding something, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And no one should live that way. That makes my heart sad. Like, you should just be able to be you and just, as long as you're not hurting others, which they aren't, or you aren't, or I'm not, just go be you. Go be humankind. Just go be both. Go do that. It just hurts my heart. So,
yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
I would say the thing about the Pride Network, which I know that's not what this call is about, but the Pride Network, if you are not part of it and you are an ally or you have interest in just learning, like that's why I'm there. I want to learn. I want to know what people are going through. I'm also a member of the Black eXp network.
Yeah,
No,
same.
not
Yeah.
a woman of color here.
Right. But there's something that you can learn from all of our different communities, and they're all welcome in that way. People
Yeah.
come to me all the time and say, why are you segregating people into these 1EXP groups? These groups aren't segregated.
No.
Not even a little bit. This is an opportunity for you to go and learn from
Yes.
Black folks and queer folks and Middle Eastern folks and young folks and seniors and any demographic you want to learn from or want to be able to sell better to.
Yes. Right.
Here it is. Right. These are learning tools. These are community tools. These are ways to grow your circle. And unfortunately, we live in an age where there's a lot of confirmation bias, where my friends all think like me and they are my friends because they think like me.
Right.
It's so important to put people in your circle that think differently and come from different backgrounds than you.
Oh yeah, it is. I have a couple of
your mind.
Well, and I have people that are very different from me in my circle, and we have beautiful, real conversations where I do think it makes a difference. We do make a difference. Like I do, okay, don't agree, but I can see that, like, and vice versa. And on the full spectrum of that, like I feel like all of us just need to we have what, one mouth and two ears. Like listen, just go listen to each other.
That's it.
Yeah, but and then for the day of Remembrance, I do think like it'd be really nice if people just, even if you don't understand anything about it or you don't really get it, like even just to pause, even just to read the words that today's the day of transgender remembrance. Like if you took a second and just found one of the stories, I think your heart could be changed because the stories are real and it's something we need to be made aware of that's happening so that we can help it to stop.
Yeah. Right. And I would encourage you when you're looking at those stories, just go to Google and search trans violence 2023. Read one of those stories, not one of those stories. You will never find one where the transgender person did something wrong to deserve what happened to them.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And that is a big mind changer.
Yes.
And, we come at this as from a point where every person has value, right? So just because you may hold a different political leaning that doesn't always align with transgender doesn't mean you can think for yourself on any number of topics. And I would issue a personal plea that you go and rethink these things that are political stances about human beings.
Right. Yes.
Right? That's really, really important. That's not me asking you to change your party. That's me asking you to hold a different view about human beings.
Yes.
Right? And not just go with the party line that these people are evil. These people are trying to take something from your kids. These people, it's just not true. And these people hold value just like you do.
They deserve health care. They deserve
health care for sure. They do.
They deserve homes to live in.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, Robin, thank you very much for joining me. This is kind of a heavy episode, but I'm sure we'll have you back in the future.
I will come back anytime you wish. And it was a heavy episode, but I feel honored to have been asked because it was, I did do a little searching about it and thinking about it. And hopefully someone will watch and go, oh, well, that makes sense. And maybe it'll change. Even if it changes one person's brain, then it's phenomenal that I got to be part of it. So thank you.
Yeah. And, me and Robin are both very open people. So if you've got questions and comments about this topic and want to just talk it out, bring it on. I love it.
Yeah, I would love it too.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into CultureCast. Be sure to join us next time. Again, this is the bi-weekly podcast about what makes us us. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.